So this video is for people who are thinking about or considering using testosterone replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy, and even those people that are on the fence thinking about using performance enhancing drugs. And I was debating about how to kind of do this, but I think instead of kind of narrating over various articles and clips, I'll link to them down below. I'll also put some images up here as I'm kind of just doing this little semi-rant, audio rant here to kind of make a case for what I'm saying. But the motivation for doing this is really because there seems to be a whole market, and it's getting progressively worse, where marketing the idea of using TRT just almost as like the new supplement of the day. So basically a regulated supplement essentially. So there's whole podcasts, YouTube videos, blogs, websites, totally dedicated to the idea of selling people on the idea of why they almost basically need testosterone replacement therapy or using testosterone. And this is, again, pretty much what I'm talking about is more or less geared towards a male audience here. But it's unfortunate because I'm even seeing people not even really searching for it. You see people through various message boards or websites or even comments talking about how they're getting on TRT now, or they're thinking about doing it. And a lot of this is just kind of more or less just this propaganda that's out on the internet that I think wasn't really an issue. And I will say, there's kind of two trains of thought. I mean, there's the people that legitimately are concerned that they have low testosterone, they have the signs and symptoms, possibly and or they got tested as well. And there's the people that are just kind of seeing fitness people. There's people that are openly either, let's say just on YouTube, for instance, that are pimping supplements or have YouTube channels that either people kind of think are using testosterone or performance enhancing drugs legally or illegally. Or they're listening to people that openly kind of promote these things and say, look at me, look how I look, and this is how you could look using these drugs. And at the end of the day, who really wins is the drug companies. And I think this is the way to think about this first and foremost, no matter what way you're going, which way you're leaning, or what point of view you're looking at this from, is that the drug companies, to me, especially as a person in health and fitness, right, the biggest motivation or biggest goal for me is to be able to go my whole life and say, I didn't necessarily hopefully don't need a prescription medication for life. Now, some people don't think that's a big deal. Some people, that's not other people's motivations, but most people are going to say that generally aren't necessarily going to want to jump on a drug, especially one they're going to have to stay on their whole entire life if they don't necessarily have to. Now, any drug, right, you're going to have your pros and cons. And some people might say, well, I'll just, people that more or less maybe don't have low testosterone, therapies and think they're just using it for the fun part of it, the marketing part of it that's kind of sold to them, will think, well, I want to use performance enhancing drugs and I'd rather get it, legally from my doctor than illegally. And that's a whole other topic we'll talk about. But one, if we just approach the idea of, is there really a testosterone epidemic? A lot of the research says no, there's not a low testosterone epidemic. If we look at the more likely rationale why people are testing low for testosterone is more than likely basically lifestyle factors. So is it the chicken or the egg? Is it that low testosterone do people have low testosterone because of lifestyle factors, or are people's lives, they having these symptoms because of low testosterone? And we know that the body is not just that one dimensional. It doesn't work just with one little factor changes and everything else changes. It's a series of systems. So for sure, if we just look at the signs and symptoms of low testosterone being low energy, increased body fat, low libido, trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, just a lack of drive overall. These are all things that obviously if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, this kind of gets marketed to you because, hey, don't you not feel these way? And you used to feel young and vibrant, and now it's kind of fading. Maybe you have low T, And that's kind of funny because obviously it's kind of easy to debunk that fairly quickly, or at least examine it and say, you're not as active. You might be following a diet, or you're not used to, that you basically can't get away with as you've gotten older. Your job, maybe you're getting complacent in your job. You just don't have any kind of natural drives. Just things are just kind of complacent. I shouldn't even say complacent. We're just kind of just lifestyle factors that cause us all to be kind of sedentary and just, the basic story behind that. So that's very easy to say, well, it's just low T causing that. And maybe you legitimately get tested and you have low testosterone, but certainly you got to at least try the idea that maybe there's other lifestyle factors can actually change and, make these, if you're looking at just one dimensional factor like testosterone, that could actually make that change. And at the very least, taking a drug versus just testosterone is not going to fix the other issues. It's like putting a Band-Aid over the ultimate problem, which is poor lifestyle, which has many other ramifications. Cardiac issues, cancers associated with poor lifestyle factors. Many things are associated with lifestyle factors. It's one of the biggest things. So even if you just address the lifestyle factors themselves, say, hey, I'm going to try this approach, you're going to get so many other benefits just doing the normal lifestyle factor recommendations than you would necessarily just taking a drug like testosterone. Just by magically taking testosterone is going to make you eat better, sleep better, perform better, move around better. And again, I'm not speaking for everybody, because there is a legitimate audience out there that probably that has low testosterone, that legitimately has these signs and symptoms and is consistently testing low. But the literature shows these people are fairly rare. And this idea that, the selling points are, there's plastics in the water, and which I'm not saying there obviously are environmental pollutants have probably increased, but that there's this dramatic, war on male testosterone that essentially you can't, function and get to, let's say, even a certain, using fitness for an example, you can't get to this physique, you can't get to this level of, well-being unless you have your T levels kind of checked. And if you're over 35, you're just screwed. You should just be getting on this. Why aren't you doing this? I'll link a Jeff Cavalieri video, which I think is one of his best ones. I don't really watch his channel that much, but it was the best video I saw of his, which basically talked about a story that was someone wrote into him saying, just come clean, tell everyone you're on testosterone or TRT, because no one over the age of 35 can look like you or be like you. And that's just really an excuse, and not having totally no knowledge about training, how the body adapts, and just especially what it's, if you're 45 years old, it's going to take you some time to have your body adapt, and no magic drug is going to make it change. But there's so many little topics that it's so hard to jump around to. So, first, logically address those signs and symptoms. Do you have those things? And if you actually get tested, what you got to realize is that the actual tests themselves are highly inaccurate. The levels themselves are very individualized. So, you can go to one test or another at one center and then the other center the next day, and it's totally different, or even the same testing center. Your levels fluctuate from day to day. And hopefully, if you're going to a doctor, a good doctor, they're going to check these things, right? Instead of just going to a doctor where, unfortunately, it's come to this, where people just kind of demand, like they do, like they go to the doctor to demand Adderall, basically. I think I have these symptoms, so give me this drug. And, most people aren't going to do that, but there are these quote-unquote, lifestyle doctors that are out there, or anti-aging type clinics and things like that. But recognizing that the test is flawed, it can be flawed or can be very easily skewed, right? Because I live in a state where you don't need a doctor's prescription to go get these levels tested. And I have friends at the gym tell me, I got this level tested, I want to try and raise it up, and they're fixated on this number, and that'll just drive you crazy. If you don't have the signs and symptoms, don't really worry about it. Or if you're trying to compete to raise your testosterone levels, it's a very flawed system, and the levels are very individual. If you think of the popular guy on YouTube, the carnivore diet guy, Sean Baker, who I've talked about on this channel as well, he's posted his testosterone levels very, very low, and yet obviously you look at him, his performance is off the charts. He physically looks like he's in good shape, admits to taking no drugs, no supplements whatsoever. So I'm not using him as like the poster child, but it's an example of how you can have very low testosterone and still be performing and just feeling great. So if that same person guy's levels test and say, I think I'm low, and they're freaking out about it, and go see their doctor, that's an issue that you kind of think about. And going back to the same idea, athletes, and even at this point too, athletes are notoriously known for having low testosterone levels, especially when they're tested like a day after hard training, because your body's testosterone levels do respond to stress accordingly. And if there's anything we can say that raises testosterone levels, it's stress, and whether that's physical stress or psychological stress. And you can see most people's lives, maybe they're not like having laborious jobs, but they're stressed down through just, constantly working, going from one stressor to another stressor, stressed by social media, looking at stupid things all day that just distract their mind, sitting down all day, whether it's not really necessarily stressful, it just tells the body, hey, I don't necessarily have to work. Mental stress is huge in manipulating our levels. But we actually have my wife's friend was an ex-NFL player. My wife's husband's an ex-NFL player. I recently had a conversation with him talking about performance-enhancing drugs in the NFL, and long story short, saying, most athletes aren't really using them. He knew one athlete who was using like TRT therapy, and the NFL let him get away with it. And he said, we always have low testosterone levels. All of us, when we ever get tested, have low testosterone levels, and they just kind of know that because of just, you're working so hard. Levels are just usually low when you test them. So that's kind of a known fact. And there's other studies that show that athletes generally have low testosterone levels. Again, I'll put links in as we're talking here. I'm putting videos up, and if you got to look at these factors before you consider it, because for me, I don't know about you guys, but the whole motivation between fitness and health is really to, again, I can't speak for everybody, but to really go through life. I want to get through life and say I didn't necessarily need a prescription medication. I didn't need something, especially something I have to take my whole entire life, and that's what testosterone is, right? You're on that stuff essentially for life. And another huge risk is obviously the endocrinologists openly tell you this, that if you're on this stuff for life, you're coming off it, you might not get your natural production back. And everyone's going to respond differently. And I meant to say this too, not only the labs are different, but also there's examples of how pharmaceutical grade testosterone is not always accurate. Especially the way it's just, once it's administered, there can be issues with that too. But so that's something. You start playing with hormones, that's a game you don't necessarily really got to be sure that you're getting it right when you're playing with it. And these people on YouTube that say they're on TRT and are just kind of jacked and swollen, dry, that's beyond normal recommended doses. If a doctor is prescribing you, that's pretty much unethical to be doing that outside of those ranges. You could argue, hey, maybe there's no side effects and it's pretty much good as long as you're watching it. That's highly debatable. Again, I'll put some examples of people who I just saw it in comments looking for this that just said they regret jumping on TRT at an early age. They wish they just tried tried these lifestyle factors. They didn't need to depend upon a drug to get shot, get daily shots by themselves or going to a doctor's office. We didn't even talk about the financial cost, whether you're paying for insurance or not, and what this is. And like I said, going back to, if you're thinking about doing drugs illegally, using testosterone illegally, that's not me to judge that, but if you're going to be doing something where you have to get it from, again, essentially the black market, you don't know what's in this, you don't know who's distributing this stuff. Even if you get it from a trusted source like some guy you don't know, again, the practices they're following. And it's just illegal. Do you want to get essentially, get a felony on your record just for something stupid like that? So the biggest thing, and I'm kind of driving home, is it's not as glamorized as it is. And most people think just because you use this stuff that you're actually going to blow up. The biggest thing you probably would notice is, and I'll link a study below where they show one of the biggest things you actually do notice is more or less the libido, the mental aspect would be definitely the thing you're going to feel the best on. But the other stuff, you're just going to jacked and tan, that stuff is highly individualized and definitely goes back to genetics. Because since I've been, since I've been training since I was 15, consistently, never missing a beat, and now I'm in mid-30s now, I've been around people my whole life, essentially, that have been using performance-enhancing drugs legally and illegally. And there's always a correlation with these people. Some people just don't respond in the way they think they're going to respond. I've known people that have so many drugs shot in them, and they look just like the regular dude. Maybe a tiny bit drier, if anything, but otherwise they're not blowing up. They don't look like professional bodybuilders. Obviously, the training has to be there, but there's also just simple genetics that really just goes into this whole picture. And for people looking at, thinking that, if in your 30s or 40s, I want to maintain that, I want to keep that, I don't want to lose this edge. I'm constantly talking to people. Since I was young, I always was doing this. Constantly talking to people that are older trainees, and it's just harder to find nowadays, but people that are in their 50s, 60s, consistently training and that are in great shape is my point. And you would say this guy looks like he's 20, has the body of a 30-year-old when he's almost pushing 60. And inevitably, there's no secret. It's just more or less consistency. These are people that have been training their whole entire lives, eating right, and doing everything right the right way. And there's people I think that think, well, I'll just jump on TRT and get to this magic bullet without putting that work in. That's, maybe could you skip ahead a little bit and skip the curve and, skip a few years possibly, but you're missing out on a lot of huge benefits just from consistent training, learning from your body, and just, again, those lifestyle factors that are just huge that come along with proper training, proper exercise, proper rest. constantly kind of moving your body, be more in tune with just, doing things and not just, and just setting goals too, which in and of itself raises testosterone levels. So that's pretty much it. I think I've ranted enough. I'm going to put in some articles here, just kind of stating my case. You could say I'm cherry picking some of this stuff. I can't speak for everybody. I'm sure there's people that will, say they felt awesome using TRT, and that's, more power to you. I'm not saying that I would judge somebody who is using it. I'm again just putting it out there that for the people that are on the fence thinking, well, should I do this? Should I do it? My point is exhaust all your options. Definitely be aware that it is still a drug. There's always pros. There's always going to be cons to these things. At the end of the day, my opinion is it makes the most sense to do it naturally for many other factors to kind of promote these things. Just look to the opposite argument, because if you always look, it's very easy on the internet, especially nowadays in Google, to find pros to TRT, because that's essentially what Google is essentially driven by, is essentially ads and hits. What's the most popular thing? And what's the most popular thing, what's sexy and sells, is that there is a magic pill, and this magic pill today is TRT, and that makes people just feel awesome, perform awesome, and just be on the top of the game, and you just are never missing a beat. But so think about that thing. If you guys have any other questions or comments, you want me to go in more detail, I certainly could go in a lot of detail just on any little one of these things, but it's just more kind of a impromptu rant, because I think this whole thing is kind of getting blown way out of proportion. I'll probably do some more videos on this as well. So let me know what you guys think. Thanks.